welcome to another live edition of Wealth Building Wednesday. Wealth Building Wednesday is brought to you by TRHT Selma. TRHT stands for Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation. And that is exactly what we hope to do with each and every broadcast of Wealth Building Wednesday. TRHT Selma exists as a partnership between the Selma Center for Nonviolence and the Black Belt Community Foundation. And so this morning we are having an awesome time talking about a very critical topic that is especially relevant in this moment. If you are new to Wealth Building Wednesday, we welcome you. Good morning to Ms. Veronica Drake. Good morning to everyone who is tuned in and watching live on Facebook or on YouTube. We also want to welcome our listeners because this audio will be rebroadcast on our media partner WBFZZ 105.3 at 1:30 in the afternoon. So welcome. Thank you all for tuning in. And today we are talking actually to the executive director of one of our partner organizations. The Selma Center for Nonviolence is the programmatic partner for TRHT Selma. We could not exist without them. And in a minute, I'm going to let you see why, because their executive director, Mrs. Ainka Jackson, is a prolific and profound educator when it comes to letting us know what issues matter. And I know that a lot of folks hear the term, they hear the word. So I want to say good morning, Mrs. Jackson. But I'm trying to dive into something to help make sure that folks can connect the dots as far as how nonviolence without the hyphen, right, is impacting our community, and that it is not just isolated to the physical violence, because a lot of times when we hear the term violence, we think about the physical violence. We think about fighting or people, physically aggressing one another, fighting, shooting, stabbing, those type of things. However, that's not the only form of violence, is it? What other forms of violence is the Selma Center for Nonviolence, Truth, and Reconciliation working to combat?
So one, we believe that anything that dehumanizes another person is a form of violence, right? And so the main forms of violence we work on are racial violence, like racism, physical violence, like with our violence intervention program and our street outreach workers and victim services. And that's the one that people typically think of, but one people often don't think of is economic violence. And that's poverty, right? That poverty is a form of economic violence. And so is gentrification, which we will be talking about today, which I define as development with displacement. And I know we'll get into that, but all of that is a form of violence because all of it dehumanizes other people. And the truth is we can't dehumanize others without dehumanizing ourselves, which means we're committing violence, internal violence, when we commit violence to other people.
Wow. Now that's a lot, and we may have to go back and unpack some of that, the internal violence of it all, right? Because
I say things and then I was just telling them that's what Lydia does. I say things and then she comes to unpack it and explain it where people can understand it better.
Yes, we do it all the time. So we definitely want to help folks better understand what it is, this term that you just brought up, and it's actually the topic of today's show, is gentrification. But I want to first ask you, if you don't mind, to share with us the role that poverty plays in violence, because they seem very connected in most cases. So is there a particular role that poverty plays with violence?
Often when I talk about the Selma Center and how we were founded, I say that in 2014, Dallas County was the poorest county in the state. And then the next year, we were the 8th most dangerous place. We were the most dangerous place in Alabama. And then the next year, the 8th most dangerous place in the country. Because I want people to see the connection. We believe that broken relationships have led to broken economies, leading to broken communities, all in need of healing. And we just don't believe this. Even the Department of Justice statistics show it, right? We often think of violence as a black issue, black on black crime. Well, people do crime where they live, and we still live in a very segregated nation, right? And so it's really the when you factor in poverty, the black between black and white is about the same. Rural and urban, it is about the same, because we think it's an urban issue. It's not an urban issue. It's an issue around poverty, because when people aren't equipped with the resources that they need, your survival instincts kick in for better or for worse. And oftentimes that is so harmful for our community. But in nonviolence, we believe in getting to the root cause. And Dr. King said, rioting is the language of the unheard. So the thing is not just to say stop rioting, right, but to hear people. And so when there is violence, we need to be saying, what are people trying to say? What are they trying to communicate, and get to the root cause of it? And poverty is so related to that. And so we can't stop crime in Selma or anywhere in the nation. We can't stop crime amongst people who are poor, because there's a lot of crime going on amongst rich people. Let me be very clear.
Correct.
Right. But the kind of the violence we're talking about right now, if we don't deal with poverty.
So this term gentrification, right? Neighborhoods that are not impoverished, where the majority of the people who live there are financially stable, upwardly mobile, if you will. Neighborhoods that have, in Selma, for instance, if we look at property values, right? The difference between a neighborhood and the amenities that are available in a neighborhood where the average house or property is worth about $50,000 to $70,000 versus $150,000 to $250,000. Gentrification tends to occur where poverty is, just as the type of violence that you were referring to. So what is gentrification? It's a big word, but what's your definition of gentrification? Say that again.
So it's typically a place where people who are wealthier come into an impoverished neighborhood and develop and displace the residents that live there. And so if it was just development, it would not be a problem, because we want our neighborhoods developed. I live here in East Selma. I want East Selma developed. But what I don't want to be is displaced. And recently encountered a situation around that with my own home, right? As people seek to develop East Selma, which is along the river, right? That I won't go into details, but I was very shocked by the language I heard of what I could do to not be to deal with the development that was going to be happening around my home. But nobody asked me what I thought should happen to my neighborhood, or what my neighbors thought should happen to my neighborhood. That is the beginning of the not just because the plans have been here, right? But the beginning of the stages of you seeing displacement happen to people, right? When you start seeing those signs, we buy cheap, we pay cash, right? And often our community don't know the value of their home. And so if you don't know that there's development coming in East Selma, right, and you sell your home for little or nothing, then someone profits off of it hugely, or property taxes rise too much there, and you can no longer stay there because you can't pay the property taxes, which is often how people get displaced. So my short way of saying it is development with displacement. When we who live in neighborhoods are pushed out of those neighborhoods, and then people who are wealthier take over those neighborhoods without regard to the people who live there and many times for decades.
So the reason this topic is super relevant right now is because as most folks who are watching know, Selma last week, tomorrow will actually mark a week, endured an E5 EF2 tornado that basically swept across the city, impacting thousands of people. Families have been displaced. There's a portion of town that has continued to largely be underserviced. Now, I will say Selma has come together in a way that I've never seen before. in order to make sure that families get what they need, from food to clothes to toiletries. It really, this, and it's sad though, it's sad that something like this had to happen, that a tornado had to rip through the middle of the city in order for us to come together. But the great thing is that there's great energy, right? There's a cry out for God and his help. There's a level of humility that just haven't really seen this ever, I don't think, as someone who was born and reared in Selma. But gentrification in particular in this moment has become a topic that we need to explore, because there is a large part of the city that was impacted by the tornado, where homes, roofs were ripped from homes, and there are homes that were totally demolished by the storm, meaning that those people the people who live there are currently displaced. But what we cannot allow to happen is that for those areas where poverty prevails, we cannot allow those spaces to be overrun, for displacement, to a permanent displacement to occur as a result of people seeking to, and I'm going to do air quotes, invest in our community. So you started to give us some signs of gentrification. What are some signs? Let's talk about that, so that people who live in wards 4, 5, and 6, because in some of 7 and 8, right? We have 8 wards, y'all. Half of them, Ward 1, that's a more affluent ward. Property values are extremely high in Ward 1. Chances are folks who live in Ward 1 have homeowners insurance and will be able to recover in a different way. But what happens to our neighbors who didn't have homeowners insurance, or who are renting, and the property owner is not willing to, or to invest in the redevelopment of that? What are some signs of gentrification that we can look out for, like right now? I know you said about the signs, we buy houses for cash. So what are some other things that we need to look for in our communities as we recover and rebuild Selma?
So let me say 2 things before I answer that question, Lydia.
Okay.
One, about the homeowners insurance. At our event last night, one of the people who were temporarily displaced, she mentioned about people. As a part of National Day of Racial Healing, we had a
community dialogue.
A community dialogue, a healing circle, where it was called Feeding the Soul, because we fed people, but we also, it was a healing circle. Yeah. And one person talked about people being criticized for not having homeowners insurance.
Right.
But when my budget is limited and I have to choose between medication and homeowners insurance, or food and homeowners insurance, I'm going to do food.
Right.
I'm going to do medication. Right. The other thing is, sometimes our houses are too badly condition and to get homeowners insurance. And so there would have to be an investment in the house to even get to the point of homeowners insurance. And so we have to be very careful about dehumanizing others with our language.
Yes.
That's balance. That is balance. Is. When you blame people for not being able to have homeowners insurance, right? That is a form of violence. So I wanted to be clear about that.
And also, Ainka, let's also talk about the homeowners who have been in the community so long that their property is paid for. Therefore, homeowners insurance isn't necessarily attached to a mortgage payment or some other payment, right? So if you've lived there if you've lived there for 40 years, the property is paid for. And again, the budgetary concerns, those are things that are real.
Right. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So the other thing I want to say is, I'm not an expert on this issue. I'm not even close to it, but I've seen it when I lived in Nashville, and I'm currently in the process of experiencing it in my own home. And so I'm going based off of lived experience more than I am research knowledge. But definitely This has been a thing before. We know that lots of people are coming in even before the tornado and buying up property in Selma.
Yes.
And if you are buying up property in Selma and you are not connected to the community, that is a sign of gentrification. Right? It's a sign that you will probably displace people, because if we have development, if we have an increased in 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 um in development and everything, but wages and wealth don't increase, displacement automatically happens. People automatically get pushed out. I could mean well, and I could want nobody to be moved out of their home, but with development of downtown, which is good, we want development, but if wages and wealth don't also increase, people will naturally be pushed out. So that's the context we were already in, and a sign we were already in with people buying up property that aren't from here, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But are you doing it in connection with the community? Are you asking the community what the community envisions and wants for the community? If you see development happening and people aren't asking you about what you want for your community, beware. Talk to your landlord. What does he plan to do with his property now that there's been a tornado? Does he plan to sell it to someone, or do you have an opportunity to buy it? Right? Because there are programs out there that Lydia will share, one that don't check for credit score. They go based on your credit history, where you can get, I mean, not a credit history,
your rental.
Your rental history, where you can get a loan. Right. And so it's important that we know these resources, so that if people are selling, that we can buy in our own communities. There are also things that we're trying to raise funds for, like a community land trust, where community buys the property and people are getting land from the community land trust. Again, making sure that the wealth stays in the community. And let me just say that this is not just a Selma thing. This is a thing that happens over the nation, not just with gentrification, but after a natural disaster, gentrification is sped up. Because oftentimes there's already a plan for it, but it is sped up. And so that was my concern, one of my concerns from the very beginning after this, that people were going to be permanently displaced, not just temporarily. Like Santa Cruz, for example. They were a livable, affordable city before their natural disaster, and now it's one of the most expensive places to live in the nation. And it's very important that we know the distinctions with these things, because we think development and we think good, and development could be good, right? But if Starbucks come and takes Miss Jackie's coffee shop away, which has been a staple for our community, that's not good, right? If I can no longer afford to live in my community, that's not good. There was already a housing shortage in Selma before the tornado. So if people buy up property and then they charge more expensive, people won't have a choice but to leave. We were already like the fastest, or one of the fastest shrinking places in Alabama. And so we have to be very careful and work together as a community. So ask questions when you see. Ask questions in love. I'm not saying yell at folks, but when you see people coming around, walking around, seeing what's going on, ask questions. It's your community. You have ownership, right? So, and that's whether you own your property or not. You have ownership in your community. Take responsibility and say, what's going on here? What are you thinking about, planning about? Have you talked to the community about what they want? Because when we get involved, that will slow some things down in and of itself, because they're like, oh, these people are knowledgeable. They know what's going on. We can't do the same things we've done everywhere else. So us being equipped with knowledge, us knowing the things and asking the questions of people when people come in the community is a good step to help resist gentrification as we work together to rebuild Selma.
Absolutely. And so I do want to just kind of quickly wrap back around, because in your response, you mentioned programs that are available to help people purchase their homes. So if you are a renter or have been a renter, and the property is owned by someone else, in this moment, if you are seeking, and they tell you that they're going to sell the property, the first question you need to ask is, would you be willing to sell to me? I really enjoy my community. I really want to stay here. I can get the financing. I want to rebuild. The way you do that is by logging on, contacting NACA. That is NACA, and you can log on to www.naca.com and get involved. You join NACA. They will walk you step by step. They have counselors that can walk you step by step through the process of getting ready to be a homeowner. You can build your home from the ground up. You can purchase a home that is already built, and this is for people who are first-time home buyers. So if you do not own your own home at this point, you have traditionally been a renter, this is your opportunity to purchase where you live. And maybe you didn't like the size of the house, right, that you were living in. So maybe this is an opportunity for you to purchase that land, build the house that you would like to have. And it's not based on your 3-digit credit score. It is based on your rental history, and it is based on your character. So there are programs and opportunities, even as we prepare to take advantage of the opportunities that Habitat for Humanity. I see a question about that. Anyone know about if HUD, maybe organizations like Habitat, are pitching in this week? That's an excellent question. We do need to dive into that. I know the Black Belt Community Foundation, in partnership with the city of Selma and about a dozen other organizations, including the Selma Center for Nonviolence, has formed a fund for people to contribute to. So if you are interested, if you have a vested interest in making sure that Selma not just recovers, but is able to rebuild and involve the community that is already here, then please make your contribution to that fund. I'll put the link in the chat so that you can have access to that. There's also a text to give. And if you are someone who is watching live and you see it in the chat, listen, you can actually copy and paste that, text it out to your friends, right? Let's make some things that are going to make a positive difference in our community go viral. Like Selma is a place that the world has depended on twice. We've changed the world twice already. In 1865, we changed the world because the Battle of Selma, the end of that battle basically was the end of the Civil War. In 1965, we changed the world by guaranteeing voting rights for all people in this country. We are not waiting until 2065 to be the change. Okay. So now this is a moment, y'all. Things happen for a reason. And although people are suffering, families are hurting, this may be the moment that we can take the bull by the horns and say, wait a minute, this is how we're going to build our community. So taking advantage of programs like NACA, diving into your application with FEMA, we have on the ground people who can help advocate for you and can actually help you complete those forms for free if you're going to take advantage of FEMA assistance. So we want to make sure, though, that we are talking about this term gentrification and helping people to kind of connect the dots as far as even why does it matter? Because what if I want Starbucks in my community? What if I want to have multi-use apartment complexes? What if I'm okay with that, right? One of the things that we have to say, and you mentioned it earlier, but what if that means, if this development means that you now get priced out? That instead of your rent being $500 per month, it's $1,000 per month, which has actually happened in places like New Orleans, Santa Cruz, Harlem, New York, right? What impact, though, does land ownership have on wealth development? I know that you talk about that in racial equity training. So what impact would that actually have on our community in wealth development?
So you mentioned our racial equity training. I'll just say very quickly, unfortunately, we had one scheduled for tomorrow and had to cancel it. But we'll have another one in February. And one of the stories we talk about is redlining and how that created the middle class and left Black people out of it and left brown people out of it. And so the primary method of wealth building is home ownership. Is land ownership. And so if we don't own land, then oftentimes that means we don't have wealth.
Right.
For some other communities, some other people, they have investments and other things. Our primary way of having investments is through land ownership. And so that wealth is so important. And so when we sell our properties, and if you want to sell your property, at least make sure you get a good price for it, right? Talk to your neighbors first, see if they want to buy it before you sell it to a developer. I am fully fine with having all those multi-use, even a Starbucks maybe. All of that can be fine if that's what the community wants and the community organizes to have. The difference between gentrification and not is community engagement, right? And the community's vision for it and the community working to make it happen. We like nice things. We want development. So it's not the problem with development, it's displacement. And we don't want our people pushed out. People have had this land for many, many generations. And so the thought of I'm losing that because you just want to make money. We believe at the center in people, planet, and profit. We believe that all three can coexist. And so it's not that we're not trying to help people get profit, get yours. We just don't want it to be at the expense of us. We want to get ours too. We believe that all of us can prosper. One of my favorite quotes is Lydia's quote that Selma is a gold mine, but we're too busy fighting over the dirt. Well, we're not going to fight over the dirt anymore. Like, there's enough land, there's enough dirt and enough land for us to all have and envision what we want so that Selma can be a model of the beloved community. So people aren't just coming based on our history, but on our healing. How did you go from the 8th most dangerous place per capita in the country to this? How did you go from these failing schools to this? How did you go from being this poor, the 9th poorest town in the country to this? It's because we pulled together as a community, not just in crisis, but far beyond this crisis, so that we could be this model of people coming together, working together, loving together, and living together.
I love it, y'all. Listen, this is an extraordinary, like, again, this has been an extraordinary week in our community, right? But this is also our chance to recover and rebuild Selma and make Selma what we, the residents, the folks who grew up here, the folks who are currently here, no matter where you grew up, right? But the people who are already here, for us to get engaged, become truly involved, and have the conversations. And so now there's a definite need for more conversations like this to occur. So as a part of what we're doing, and as a spinoff of what we conducted last night, in celebration of National Day of Racial Healing, we want to invite you to reach out, whether it is to the Selma Center for Nonviolence, whether it is to Mrs. Jackson directly. You can reach out to me directly. We want to have these conversations. There are resources available from NACA to help with FEMA applications. There are resources available around accessing emergency food stamps. There are resources around utility assistance during emergencies and things like that. There are resources available. So if you're interested in having this conversation, you want more information about how you can, as a person who is already in Selma, or you have a vested interest in our community and you want to consider and make sure that the community, that the residents are involved, we want to offer that opportunity for you. So if you want us to bring this conversation to your community, hop in our inboxes, y'all. Look, see, this first time I've ever invited anybody to DM me. Look, but hop in the inbox, baby, and let's talk about this thing, because what we have to do is make sure that our community is positioning itself so that we can all win. We literally can do this together. And the only way we can do this and get it right is if we work together. So I do want to encourage you. And if you're watching or listening and you'd like to make a contribution, you can simply text the word Selma, SELMA, to the number 334-378-3700. Again, that is SELMA. You can text that word Selma, where we are, to 334-378-3700. When you do, you'll get a link back. You can make your contribution. It is tax deductible because you are contributing to the Black Belt Community Foundation. And again, there are dozens of organizations that have signed on in support of this community-based initiative of distributing the funds. This is not government led. Even though we're partnered with the city of Selma wants to make sure that we are documenting the process, right? And that there are community nonprofits that have a real interest in making sure that our entire community, that equity is applied in the distribution and not just equality. Mrs. Jackson, listen, it's our 30 minutes. Look, we could talk forever because we often do. Look, so the 30 minutes that we have right now in this moment are up, but I do want to invite you to just share anything that you would like to, as far as closing remarks.
So just two things. Message us on Facebook, on Selma Center's Facebook page, or you can call us at 334-526-4539, 334-526-4539. And lastly, I'll just say, my shirt says, "Will you be a Selma 2.0 solutionary?" And oftentimes this shirt is seen by people who live all over the world, right? And asking them to be a Selma 2.0 solutionary, which is something that's really beyond Selma. It's not just Selma, but if Selma's going to be a model, it's beyond that. But I want to speak really clearly to those who are here in Selma, even if you were directly affected by the storm. Our office manager was directly affected by the storm, and she is a Selma 2.0 solutionary. She is on the ground helping people, from our MLK Drive giveaway to another closed giveaway to last night. Like, she's being a Selma 2.0 solutionary. And I just want to encourage people that this is an opportunity for Selma to really have Selma 2.0 in a very clear way, right? In a very clear way. If we as visionaries make those visions into solutions, we can all be Selma 2.0 solutionaries.
Absolutely. So we want to thank you and your team for all the hard work that you all are doing. Y'all have been feeding people, boarding up houses, putting on tarps. All of us, I think, have really gotten a chance to see community, right? We often talk about and we hear about people saying, "Oh, well, we've got to work together as a community," and that's exactly what Selma is doing. We will carry this energy into and throughout the rest of 2023 and beyond, because Selma, this is our chance. Mrs. Jackson has told us. I'm agreeing, y'all. This is our chance. We can actually make Selma everything we want it to be. But we've just got to be engaged as a part of the process. So y'all listen, if they say that we don't have any more seats at the table, get your own chair and come on and have a seat. It's time for us to get to work. And in the meantime, in the between time, because I know that this broadcast is about to wrap up, every single Wednesday, TRHT Selma produces Wealth Building Wednesday, where we put information where the goats can get it, y'all. We want to make sure that people can understand this thing called money, that it is just a tool, and that we are designed to not to lack, but we are designed to be wealthy. We can't have a father with cattle on 1,000 hills and not have a hill for ourselves. All right. So until next time, until next Wednesday, we want to thank you for tuning in. Y'all, please like, tag, share. Selma Center for Nonviolence, Black Belt Community Foundation, TRHT Selma. We love you. If you need us, you know how to get to us. We are all over everywhere. Just grab us, touch us. We in the street, look, doing the work. We love you. Y'all be safe. Meantime, let's get to building this wealth. Thanks for tuning in.